the first day of middle school. There was a new kid. He was the son of a minister, and he saw that I had a BYU sticker on my water bottle. He's like, "Wait, like, are you Mormon?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." I don't know, maybe like he was a member of the church or something, gonna bring something up. He
Yeah.
was like, "I have to tell you this, and I'm really sorry, but you're gonna go to hell."
Hi, and welcome back to Latter day Believers. I'm Lauren, and today we're going to hear the conversion story of my favorite co host, Wilson. Wilson, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, Lauren. Good to be
Good.
here.
Yeah, it's always glad to have you host with me. I'm always so glad about it.
I know we are co-hosts, so it's nice whenever we can
Co host.
co-host and do our thing.
Okay, so then take me to the beginning of, I guess, where your story of conversion kind of starts. I mean, I assume when you were born, but there's a journey you go through to decide whether or not you actually want to join the church and then throughout your life if you want to stay or not. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was raised a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? My parents aren't from Utah. They're from Arizona and Oklahoma. I was born in Vegas, but moved to Texas whenever I was pretty young.
Mm,
So pretty much all of my life, I grew up in the Bible Belt, and I feel like that had like a large influence on my conversion to Christ and just in my relationship with God. From a young age, I felt like I had faith. Like I believed in God. Like I went to church every Sunday, right? We studied scriptures as a family, laid a good foundation. But it was definitely like really childlike faith
yeah.
for a long time, just because like I was a kid, you
Hmm.
know. But for people who don't really know what it's like to live in the Bible Belt or what it's like to live in the South, religion plays a huge part of the culture. So everyone's kind of up in arms about what denomination are you? You should come to church with me. You should come to our activities. You should come to our service. So as a kid, I didn't really quite understand, like, because all my friends at church, or sorry, all my friends at school, they believed in God, right? But I didn't kind of understand that, like, they were going to different churches and just like what that meant for me. Because I
Hmm.
always thought like, oh, I just thought it was all like, well, it's all God. Like it's all just having faith. It's all just praying, right?
Right.
I didn't realize that there were like micro distinctions between the different denominations.
Right.
I just thought like, we're all just friends. We're all just believing in God. It's great. But for me, this kind of like um I don't know, like interreligious conversation was something that I kind of partook in at a pretty young age. Like
How young would you say?
I feel like I had questions about being a member of the church whenever I was probably like 8 years old, I would say.
Around
Just
the time you get baptized?
yeah,
Yeah.
honestly. Like just like as a kid in class, it just comes up. It's just such a part of the culture and such a part of our lives that it would be weird not to talk about it, right?
Right.
Even as little kids. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, like on Tuesdays, like I go to Cub Scouts at my church and like
Hmm.
this whole thing. For me, I guess whenever I started really kind of considering like, wait, like is church something that I really want and that I really want to take seriously comes from playing baseball
Really?
because I love baseball, and the problem is they have a ton of tournaments on Sundays and over
Mm.
weekends, and it's a lot of travel whenever you want to take it pretty seriously. And I did because I loved it, but I could never ever play on Sundays. It was a rule
Mm.
that it was just kind of like it was in my family, and I agreed to it, like I understood why, but I was always really disappointed.
Well, of course. Yeah.
And I'd have coaches who would come up to me and teammates who'd come up to me, even as a kid, right? I'm like, 9, 10 years old. We'd be like, why can't you play? Like, we need you. Like, we need you for our tournament. Like, we're going to state and all this stuff. And I could never go. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like I have church.
Hmm.
And I was like, you can't just skip it. Like, you can't, like, because obviously everyone else also had church. Like, they were Baptist, they were Methodist, they were Catholic, they were whatever it was, right? They're like we can miss church for 1 week. Like, it's okay. Like, you can still come play with us. And I was like, no, like I don't play baseball on Sundays. It was always my rule. And people understood that, obviously. They
Hmm.
respected my devotion, but it was just tough because they were also religious. They were also believing. As a kid, it's just kind of like I want to play too. So there were certain things like that that kind of had always excluded me growing up because I didn't have a ton of friends that were members of the church. Like I had some really close friends, but
Right.
most of like throughout middle school and high school, a lot of my friends were other Christian denominations, which was awesome. I got a holistic perspective of religion that way, but in a sense, it did also exclude me a little bit because they would hang out on Sundays, pretty much every Sunday. They always hang out, and I never could because that's like a decision I made, right?
Hmm.
So I just noticed that as I grew up, I was constantly facing the choice of, like, is this real? Like, do I want to take my religion seriously? Do I want to take my relationship with God seriously? This also manifested itself in conversations that I had with people who maybe weren't quite as understanding
Right,
of
challenging
my.
what you believe and wanting you to come to their activities on Wednesday instead of your church's
Mhm.
activities.
Exactly, because with so many churches, that's gonna spark a little bit of competition. And it's nothing that we ever really tried to, like, fuel, but,
Right,
like, for a lot of people, like, church is their livelihood, right? Priests are making money and supporting their families off of how many people are coming to their church.
right.
And so, like, there's obviously gonna be some drive to try and get people to come. So, there's a lot of, like, missionary efforts going on between everybody. So, yeah, I was pretty much constantly fielding questions about why I was going to my church. And within our community, people started to get pretty hostile towards members of the
Mhm.
church. For me, like, I remember just pretty vividly, like, the first day of middle school, right? I sat in the cafeteria. I was with some of my friends, and there was a new kid, who was joining the friend group, and was like sitting down, like we're getting to know the new guy, and it was like super nice. He was the son of a minister in the community, and he saw that I had a BYU sticker on my water bottle.
Oh,
And he was like, and he recognized, he's like, "Oh, BYU." He's like, "Wait, like, are you Mormon?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." I thought like, oh, maybe he was gonna like, I don't know, maybe like he was a member of the church or something, gonna bring something up. But he
yeah.
was like, "Hey, so I feel like I have to tell you this, and I'm really sorry, but you're gonna go to hell
Oh
unless you
my
come to church with me."
goodness.
Yeah, first day of middle school.
Just so direct like that.
That's not the first time I'd heard that either. They just like they felt obligated to tell me that because they knew that I was a member of the church. And that was just kind of like how people regarded members of the church in my community.
Oh my goodness.
Like they respected us, but at the same time like they thought we were going to hell. They thought we were in the wrong, and they like saw their moral duty as a righteous Christian to warn us and to try and save us.
I that's such a complex thing, I feel like, because as somebody who also didn't grow up in Utah and grew up around a bunch of different religions, for some Christian denominations, it seems the way that I was preached to as well was, I care about you, therefore I'm going to let you know that you're going straight to hell unless you join my church. But it really does the opposite, because as far as I know, nobody in the LDS church threatens people with their own salvation to come to church.
No,
And I'm sure it does happen in, among certain people and stuff like that, because people can be people. But I that's not something we preach in church. That's not something we talk about of how to get people to come to church. It's love, share, invite, not threaten and invite. You know what I mean?
threaten and invite. Yeah, which I think is like just like a really just a much better approach
Yeah.
holistically. Like it's in line with what we believe, right? Like obviously we don't believe that anyone is really going to hell, barring the sons of perdition. But I don't
Mhm.
even know how you do that. But like it's in line with what we believe, and it's also just a more Christ-like approach. Like just I don't know, damning people to hell is not necessarily, I feel like, the best way to show Christ-like love to other people.
Did hearing those things when you were so young scare you at all? And did it actually hinder you or make you hesitant about the church? Or did it make you just want to investigate more?
To be honest, no, like, I was never really scared because I feel like I had at that point, like, a relationship with God to the point where I didn't think that he would ever just, like, condemn me, right? Because
Yeah.
I felt like whenever I prayed, I felt like I was talking to God, and I didn't think that that deity would do something like that whenever I felt like I had a like, I felt like I was on the right path.
Right.
So when they would say that, like, I recognized that it was more of, like, what they've been taught and their culture and, like, their understanding of the Bible, and it just wasn't something that I shared. It's just kind of like the approach that I had adopted because it
Yeah.
is something that I encountered a lot. Yeah, so whenever it kinda came to these kind of, like, almost like confrontational arguments, one thing that I did a lot is I talked to my parents, right?
Oh.
Especially my dad, just because he's always kinda been in my corner. And the funny thing is, this is also something that he had experienced just as a working professional. So he's a high school teacher. It was really interesting that a lot of the times I would have these conversations at school with my peers, then he would also have the exact same conversations with his coworkers. I remember like my tennis coach in high school was a very devout Methodist, awesome person, and he would come into my dad's classroom during lunch every day. and they would just talk religion pretty much for like the entire hour for months and months, and they became really good friends. And my dad would share these experiences with me that he had, or like experiences that he had, like saying no to coffee and then having people think that he was ridiculous, or whenever he had like at one point during the school, just like among the teachers, they had like every week they'd have like a little religious conversation, like every Monday, something like that. And then they had like a Mormon Monday where like he explained a little bit, and like someone like him attacking him about polygamy. And then he like slowed down and like gave like a good answer and like explained, like the culture and the context of the time.
Right.
And he thought everyone was like on the same page. And then someone just like made a joke about how many moms he had, just like right after. And it just like from talking with my dad about these experiences, I realized that I wasn't the only one who was ever being like ridiculed or made fun of for being a member of the church.
Right.
Like those conversations really helped because I realized that like my dad is awesome, right? And if he's experiencing this, then like it's totally okay for me to also take some heat sometimes.
Yeah.
So it just kind of like became a way of life. I just kind of accepted it.
I do agree that that is an extremely mature mindset for someone in middle school, high school to have. It's like, I just got to take the heat. That's just how it's going to be sometimes. I did not have that mindset when I converted, but I think that's absolutely amazing. That's great. Did you have any other resources you turned to besides your dad, or maybe resources that your dad turned you to help you?
Mhm. Especially like in middle school and in high school, as these sorts of conversations became more complex, people would draw on more aspects of church history
Mm,
and like other kind of anti information towards the church.
right.
As I'd bring that in, I turned a lot to gospel topics essays. I would listen to like a lot of like LDS scholarship and just kind of Bible scholarship in general, just because I thought it was really interesting and I appreciated the approach that they had. And just overall, I'd research a lot of like CES devotionals and what general authorities had talked about. So just like a lot of different sources. I talked to my seminary teachers who were fantastic resources. And honestly, talking with pretty much any adult member of the church who had lived in the Bible Belt for like 2+ years, they've definitely had an experience talking with somebody about the church and having to defend their testimony and their faith to somebody.
Hmm.
So by just talking to more and more adults and hearing what they had to say, like everyone had an experience with that. So I could kind of draw from them and what they had said too. So just kind of like drawing from tons of different sources and different people that I slowly began to just kind of realize that like this is always going to kind of be a thing. People are always going to come at me,
Hmm.
but my relationship needs to be between me and God, and I can't worry
Absolutely.
about anybody else, right? So ultimately, I feel like that's where my conversion stems from. I can't just say that it was like in one moment I was like, "Oh, I know God is real. I know the church is true. I know Joseph Smith was a prophet, all of these things."
Right.
I don't even know if I can say those with 100% surety.
Because that's the point of faith, right? To wake
Exactly.
up and choose to believe it every day. Yeah.
Exactly. But through all these experiences that I've had, and as I've prayed, as I've studied the scriptures, as I've served a mission, I've realized that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is where God wants me to be. There's no better place for me. There's no place where I've grown more, where I've learned more, where I felt more love. There's no place where I felt a stronger connection to God. That's another thing too. I've been to other churches, like I've been to Baptist churches and Methodist churches, Catholic churches, and Presbyterian churches, and the spirit is there.
Hmm.
All of these like devout Christians that I've met over the course of my life, like I have so much respect for them and for their commitment to Christ. And there's absolutely truth there. But from my personal experience, I felt the strongest connection to God through my covenants and through the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So for me, that's how I found out that this is the place for me.
Do you have any advice for anyone who might be that kid in middle school or high school right now who's going through a hard time, facing a lot of questions and judgment from their peers, and doesn't really know where to start in trying to reconfirm that relationship with God?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because honestly, I wish that I had someone who could have answered that for me, right?
Yeah.
But here's what I would say is that you're never alone. Like it may feel incredibly lonely. It may feel isolating to believe in God and have people make fun of you for that, or have people who are going to ridicule you for that. But you're never alone. there are parents, there are adults, there are people out there who are rooting for you, who are cheering for you. And most importantly, Christ is there for you. The fact that you have an opportunity to stand up for Christ, even if there's literally no one else there to help you, I think is a privilege. And it's something that we can look back and really cherish as a chance to testify of Christ. Because I look back on those experiences and I'm really grateful for them and how it changed me. And I'm sure it'll change them too.
And I think that is a wonderful perspective to have on it. Thank you again, Wilson. And thank you guys for watching. If you have any comments or questions for Wilson, leave them down below, and we'll see you next time. Bye.